Hello and welcome back to the Ice Storm channel. We are currently running 16 video podcast episodes over 16 days in support of the campaign 16 Days of Activism. This is UN Women's incentive to prevent violence against women. And we are raising funding for safe spaces now.
Public spaces need to be safe and inclusive for all now. A report by UN Women UK reveals how common sexual harassment is in the UK. 97% of women my age said they had experienced harassment. Your ideas to support us have already started making a change. At music festivals, with taxi companies, on public transport, in organisations and in online spaces. It's time for a change. Please support Safe Spaces now by donating to the cause or get involved. You can find the link next to this video. Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us on this episode, which is on the topic of nightlife violence. Unfortunately, our podcasts are going to be on quite dark and heavy topics, but this is the whole point of it. We want to create awareness of the violence that is going on in the country against women and girls. So with me today, I've got two very knowledgeable women who are doing amazing stuff to prevent violence against women and girls. I've got Lisa BASKOTT, who is the founder of Second Line of Defense, and I've got Emma Kay, who is the founder of Walk Safe. So we're going to hear from both of them, but I'm going to start with you, Lisa BASKOTT. Thank you so much for joining me, and tell us a little bit more about you and what you do.
Yeah, well, I fell upon the industry sector that I work in, which is the private security industry. Just under 2 years ago, I set up an organisation called Second Line of Defense, and it's a recruitment agency, but it specialises in trying to address the gender imbalance in frontline security in the UK. And my company was set up as a direct response to the murder of Sarah Everard in my hometown of Clapham. What I witnessed was a horrific response to the murder of that woman by a police officer, and the fact that women and vulnerable groups in the UK were being subjected to all sorts of harassment and sexual assault and violence, and I wanted to do something about it. So I set up the organisation, but I've also been a keen campaigner for preventing violence against women and girls and vulnerable groups. And so I've been working as a sort of accidental activist in that area.
Thank you so much for joining us. And Emma Kay, tell us a bit more about you and Walk Safe.
So yes, I'm the founder of Walk Safe. Quite like Lisa, this has been something that probably wasn't in my roadmap, but after having a lot of lived experience with sexual harassment from the age of 12 years old, it was something that I've always felt very passionately about trying to solve. And it was actually after the birth of my daughter that I realised that I didn't really want to normalise this stuff. And we set about creating what was originally just an app. So we are a free personal safety app designed to keep people safer. But actually, since then, we've got a suite of revenue generating products, and we've actually created more technology that helps businesses to keep their staff safer. So it very much is a personal, endeavor, something that I definitely know how it feels, and I think that always drives me. And quite like Lisa, it was actually after the tragic news of Sarah Everard that I think that the whole world kind of woke up to how much gender-based violence is such an epidemic. And actually, I think you asked about nightlife. I think that it's something that I think has risen. I think the issues have always been there, but I think it's something that as a society we're all waking up to the fact that we're just not going to put up with the amount of harassment that is on our city streets. And I think it is found, I think I found my users have tried to take action by downloading an app because they feel they need to do something about their safety, and they are harnessing technology to help them stay safer.
That's when technology can be of good help. So that's a fantastic project. Lisa, tell us a bit more about, we know that 1 in 3 women in the UK have experienced violence, and often it's through someone they know. I mean, this is just shocking. It's unacceptable. And this is also why we're doing this campaign, because we want to see whatever we can do to stop it. Looking at this specific topic of nightlife violence, what can you say about what's going on there in the UK now?
Well, it's interesting for me because I'm also a serving magistrate. I've been a magistrate for 11 years. So I kind of see both ends of the spectrum. So as a door supervisor, having worked on the doors in Brighton and Hove for over a year and a half, to gain that kind of anecdotal experience myself about what it was like to be a frontline officer working in that environment, but also having an opportunity to speak to the general public about their experiences. And it's a really sad state of affairs when most of the people that you speak to, and I spoke to hundreds of people, they can all tell you a really bad story about, being treated really badly by someone on the doors, or an offence that took place in the organisation, and not being believed when they went up to someone of authority to talk about it, and then just the nightmare at every stage. I think there's a crazy statistic that says that women generally have to touch points with about 10 different agencies when they've been abused or assaulted in some way before they can get help. That's absolutely unacceptable. It's actually a disgraceful statistic. And then also for me, I saw a correlation in sort of bad behavior, let's just put it that way, post-Brexit. So we had a situation where perpetrators were locked down with victims of domestic violence, coercive control, and we started to see the effects of that post-Brexit, right? And then we also saw a cohort of young people who basically had an 18-month period on the run up to becoming 18, where that rite of passage that you have when you kind of go out, you test drinking, you throw up a bit, none of that was possible. And then they came out at the end of lockdown into universities, and they were feral, right? They had absolutely no idea about how to behave with each other, what responsible behavior looked like. They couldn't handle drinks, they were taking drugs. A lot of them were suffering from mental health issues. And so you had this absolute sort of Molotov cocktail of enormous stuff going on within our societies, and it was manifesting itself particularly within that nighttime economy. You've got drink, you've got drugs, you've got aggressive behavior, all coming together on the streets of cities across the country. And as Emma said, it's a bloody endemic. It's really it's everyone's problem. This is not something that police or emergency services alone are going to be dealing. This is something that we all have to take responsibility for. So the solutions that we need to find to these problems are collective, and I genuinely believe that.
Emma, what have you seen and what do you know that drives you?
So interestingly, probably the main, I'd probably say the one thing I've seen, which is fantastic, is I think businesses are understanding that they play a role in supporting their community, supporting their staff. They really start to get welfare. And this is something that I think is only growing, which is a positive. I think that if we look back 3 years ago, safe spaces designed for people to walk into off the street just weren't a thing. We didn't have them. So I think that positively, I'm seeing changes within communities with that safe haven or safe space, which we plot on our map. So again, talking about it from a technology perspective, people do feel unsafe, and they're going onto our free app to see where they can go in real time for a safe space. And that tends to be more, nighttime focused, although we do have spaces for daytime economy. But actually, it just shows there's such a need there. And we also plot where night pastors or security or night marshals are, so people can find support in real time, because that's what it's about. And sadly, when I know you touched on it a little bit, Lisa, about that sort of younger generation that are going out and having fun, and we want them to do so safely. We want them to experience nightlife and to enjoy what their city has to offer. But sadly, things can go wrong. And I think it's about harnessing the tools you have around you, whether that be door staff or a safe space or technology. I think that there is such a need for it right now, and it is fantastic to see places coming on board and understanding the need, because this issue isn't going anywhere, and what we need a collective effort to try and solve it. So I think putting things in the right places will genuinely help to keep people safer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lisa, you've been on the ground out there at night. What can you give us some? I know you have a couple of stories of what you've seen happening. How does something kick off and develop?
It can be a number of reasons. I mean, generally speaking, if you're talking about a club in a university town, which, you know, major cities, most of them have one or two universities, there'll be big clubs having big nights on, you know, pretty much every day of the week. And essentially with young people, what they tend to do is that we all used to do it. I did it when I was at university, but it's really a thing now. And you can imagine with the cost of living crisis that, you know, every penny, they need to stretch every penny a long way. So they do an awful lot of pre-drinking. So they will start drinking cheaply at home. I mean, and we're talking consuming an awful lot of alcohol before they even leave the house. So already, particularly for groups of women in particular, they're already in a slightly more vulnerable position. By the time they get to the club or the bar, they're halfway on their way to being pretty storming. So some of the issues, obviously, as a door staff, is that we can't let intoxicated people into a licensed premises if they're really obviously drunk. But so it's about, in those instances, using your common sense as a door supervisor to ensure that you are balancing the act of, here are a group of people that are, I view those young girls as a group of vulnerable people. And by saying that one or two of them can't come in and separating that group, already what you're doing is isolating two young women who are now on their own, without their friends, and you've made them vulnerable. So it's about training those staff to say, look, is there another way to deal with that? Maybe none of them come in and you suggest that they go to the local McDonald's and sober up and eat some food. And then if they can prove to me when they come back that they've done that, and I'll be keeping an eye on them, you can come in and have a good time. It's about balancing the fact that these are young people. This is a rite of passage. They want to have fun and you want to facilitate that. You don't want to just stop them going in. And you also have to recognize your role and responsibility in the actions that you take by saying that that person can't come into a club. And I think up until now, that has never really been a consideration of the sort of training of doors. And it's one of the things that I am absolutely passionate about, is we have to get the training of those people on that front line right, because they basically need to reflect the people coming through the doors. They need to understand their journeys and understand that, this person is from that group. We need to make sure that we're paying particular attention and that they're safe. And that goes with what actually happens in the venue as well. So it's this 360-degree duty of care. It doesn't stop the minute you get their money and they spend their money in the venue, and then you say bye-bye on your way. It's this holistic approach to safeguarding, and we need to change that. We need to really ensure that door supervisors understand the diversity within the LGBTQ community, and that somebody who comes up to the door and has a passport but looks like nothing like it because they're going through a transition, don't interrogate them on the door. Treat them with respect and find other ways of dealing with them. So I think, for me, and I've spoken to the regulator about this on a number of occasions, I don't particularly think that the entry-level training that security officers get, which is called the Security Industry Authority, the SIA, is fit for purpose. It's 20 years old and it's never been changed. And it is not reflecting the issues that are actually happening in society today. Spiking, upskirting, all of these things, catcalling, you name it. These are not things that you're taught when you go on the training course. You spend more time learning about fire hydrants. Unacceptable. We need to change it. And so this is something that I am pushing for and working with the regulator to force them to do something about it.
And that is so important. That is amazing, Lisa, what you're doing. I'm going to hop over to Emma, and I want to hear a little bit more how these apps work for those who haven't used them or seen them.
Definitely. And just to echo what Lisa says around training, I think that's so important. And this is actually part of our app. So I can definitely walk you through it, because I think we've really changed. I think when we first launched our app, what we kind of focused on was plotting crime data. So we pulled that data from the police database and we highlighted it on our safety map. And that would give our users an idea of where crime hotspots were. But we soon realised actually that there's more to it than that. You need to take into consideration the time of day a crime happened, etc., etc. So what we ended up doing was plotting safe spaces. So on our safety map, you can have a look in your area, and we plot where taxi ranks are, we plot where safe spaces are, and if those safe spaces have had specific training. So if they have been trained in active bystander training, anti-spiking training, if they are LGBTQIA plus friendly, if they can provide a user with charging stations, anything that can be really helpful to you if you felt unsafe or you were walking alone at night. So that's part of the app, is our safety map, which everyone seems to really love. And we also have a suite of digital tools. So that's a tracking feature. So if you are walking from your home to the station, you can ask someone to follow you in real time. We also have a non-tracking feature for those, I don't know, if you've got teenagers and perhaps they don't want you to know what they're up to, but you just want to know that they've gotten home on time. So that's a non-tracking feature. So you set it before you leave the house. It takes 30 seconds to set up. You say, I'll be home by 12 p.m. Send it to your trusted friend. And if they're not home by that time, a last known location gets sent to you. So it's all about trying to take the hassle out of having to remember to send the text. And if they get home in time, you get an alert saying they're home. So it was all about trying to make personal safety easy, simple, and just an elevation of that get home, I'm home safe text really was what was the driver, but also making it free, because again, personal safety is a basic human right. It's something we shouldn't be paying for. So I think it was, crucial to us in our mission that the app stays free. So hence why I've got other revenue generating products to sustain this model, because ultimately we need everyone to be able to access it from, all parts of the country. So we're free and we're national. So that was another really big driver, is I didn't want people, especially students, going from one part of town to another and having a completely different experience, because they should be able to know where the safe spaces are in their hometown or where their university is. So it was really important to have all those stakeholders and all these safe spaces being plotted in one place that is free nationally.
Brilliant. And are you connected to safe spaces now?
Yeah, we've got lots of safe spaces on our app, which is fantastic. We've got we work with councils, we work with bids, I work with police forces, night marshals. So it's fantastic. And actually every area has a different process and a way of doing things. And we understand that everyone's nighttime economy strategies are different. So it's all about working with them. What is important to that community? What would that community like to see? And how we can really support all the wonderful initiatives that they're doing.
Brilliant. So UN Women UK's incentive Safe Spaces now, they actually have workshops, and we had Tabata Morton in the opening episode talk about how they've trained a lot of taxi drivers so they can recognize exactly what you're saying and get on board. And she was saying this is such a sort of visual example, how they came in feeling a bit guilty, almost like they would be told off, but coming out really inspired and with a huge understanding of why it's so important for all of us in the community to recognize these things. So I think you are two key people in spreading this awareness and creating a more safe ground for women especially, but also both disability, people with disability, and men, of course, as well. Both young men and older men are also violented against. So this is hopefully now going to grow much quicker, so we can see that people are just not going to get away with it. It's not anymore on anymore. We need to take action against it. We need to stop it. So amazing progress from both of you. Now I'm just curious because Lisa, a while back, and I know you know the Churchill Square area in Brighton. I was walking back with two mums. It wasn't even particularly late. We were both, you know, middle-aged mums with children, teenagers, and this big fight kicks off in the middle of the street, like literally in the middle of the street where the buses go down on Churchill Square. And it's one guy jumping on another guy, and they kind of punching. It's not, you know, knives or anything, but God knows where it's going to go. And it was really scary. And we were just standing there. What do we do? You know, we don't know if they're friends, if they play fighting. It did not look very friendly, but we don't know what to do. Do we call the police? Do we get involved? Do we all start shouting like mums, you know, to kids, like, stop that right now. Stop that. Stop fighting. Get off him. But what do we do in a situation like that?
Well, again, I know, and we're seeing rising levels of violence on our high streets, you know, and that's connected to a 25% increase in shoplifting, massive increase in organized crime, you know, all of this stuff, and using young people. So organized crime groups using young people as a vehicle to going sweeping off stuff off shelves, you know. All of this is kind of, it's this sort of melting pot of stuff that's going on. But essentially, once again, frontline security, this is this whole conversation about, you know, you're not just there to sort of safeguard that front door. You have a duty of care to what is going on around you. And most major towns and cities are in areas what are called business improvement districts. Emma mentioned something called BIDs, and within that there are business crime reduction partnerships. So basically all of the sort of high street shops and, you know, organizations club together and essentially put money into a pot to kind of help combat antisocial behavior and effectively stuff like that. So when you see something like that, if the nearest place to you, you see a guy with a high vis on outside Primark, go and approach him and say, can you get on your radio? You need to tell, you know, control that there is something kicking off right here in Churchill Square and you need to get down here, because there are mobile patrols that go around and basically will respond to things like that. But essentially you pick up the phone, you know, even though it might be difficult and they might not turn up, you are a citizen of this country and we have emergency services, and it is their job to come and make sure that stuff like that does not happen. You know, you're there with your children and you have the right to be able to walk along the street without fear, right? Without seeing that type of behavior. So first and foremost, if, you know, you look to your left and there is a shop, go and approach someone on that door. They have a radio with them attached to their high vis. They will be able to make a call just like that, and a mobile patrol will probably get there faster than a police officer, just put it that way. Yeah,
they're first responders, you're right, completely.
Yeah. But it is sad that we're seeing this more and more often. I think 1 in 4 occasions of people going out, just going about their daily business, shopping, Primark, you know, H&M, you're going to come across some sort of level of abuse, whether it's harassment, racial spurs being, you know, spoken to someone on the door. It's just, you know, just horrible sexist behavior. And as, you know, Emma mentioned, it's like, it feels as though people doing this, the perpetrators, believe that this is just acceptable, that people are just going to roll over and think it's okay. But quite rightly so, Emma, I felt it this year, this sort of this coming together finally of people saying enough is enough. I certainly felt that way, which is what drove me to sort of embark on 2 industry sectors that I knew nothing about, but I was so compelled to do something about this. I have 2 young teenage children, and I will no way, whilst these 2 eyes are open, am I going to sit by and think it's okay for that kind of this behavior within our society to be acceptable. It is my duty as their parent to keep them safe as much as I can. And so I need to do something about it. I can't sit and moan and then do nothing. That's the way I am. But I just think we all need to recognize that this is everybody's problem. We have to do something about it. I feel really passionately about it.
What can I again, as a middle-aged woman, do to support?
Listen, I mean, there are so many incredible agencies out there doing brilliant things, but particularly within the industry that I work within, which is private security, what I've been able to witness is so someone not from that. So I'm not law enforcement, I'm not security, I'm not ex-military, but what I am is a woman who's lived life. I have 2 teenage children. I can see the wood for the trees, and there's an awful lot of good stuff going on, but it's still sort of happening in silos, and it's sort of my pet hate, right? Get together, everybody. We need to just, we're not even touching the surface of the level of collaboration that I think we need to do. And this conversation, it needs to be happening consistently across the country at the same time. And so we need to be having those big conversations about, have we got the right people doing that job, that safeguarding job at that frontline level? No. We've got some big changes that need to go on there. It's about having the conversation around what needs to be done and doing something about it. And then, as connected to that, what are we doing? How are we as a society making sure that we are hearing the voices of those marginalized groups who are disproportionately being affected day and night, going about their daily business? You'd think that Brighton, being the gay capital of the country, would be a safe haven, right, for the gay community. No, it is not, right? This community suffers, and it's unacceptable. And then, finally, again, connected to that is, what are we doing to ensure that our communities are as resilient as they need to be? We need to be looking at safe spaces, and a safe space could be a football terrace, it could be a park, it could be a university campus. I particularly hate being in car parks day or night. Those places are not designed for women, right? I'm absolutely frightened day or night when I go into a car park, because it's just like too many places where you just think someone is lurking around, and in that horrible little grimy step that you have to go down to kind of go, it's just horrible. And it's like, we need local authorities, business improvement districts, we need to start thinking about the way in which we plan these spaces, and to ensure that we are thinking about all people, not just men, right? Because most of these places are designed with men in mind, and we've got to get out of that now. We've got to change that narrative. And again, it's only by using the framework of your community. We've got an election coming up, right? Use your vote. If you want to see change, if you want to make sure that things are happening, or you're not happy with a thing, use your vote to do something about it. But I just genuinely say to people, you need to start being active. I think the days of us sort of sitting behind and going, oh, that's somebody else's problem, oh, I'll let the school do with that. No. We all of us, tiny little bits, all of us doing stuff. And I think we will go somewhere to having that kind of national conversation about changing those sort of big core areas that are affecting people's daily lives. Like, every aspect of your life is being challenged, whether you're as a woman, or whether you're going shopping with your son and you're in the car park and you're feeling vulnerable. These are conversations that we all need, and we all experience these things. But as a collective, we have that voice, more likely that will bring about change, right?
We need to change men designing places for men. Designed for men by men. Emma, can we talk a little bit more about these unsafe spaces? Is there an area in particular where we know that it's more like a parking house, a parking space, back streets? What do we know about both the specific areas and maybe a demographic? Is there anything we can say about that to avoid, and what gets pinged on your map to avoid?
So I try to stay away from talking around unsafe spaces. I hate the feeling of, we already do feel fearful, and I'm always very conscious around creating more fear. So I think my statistics do show that car parks, in and around car parks, and even supermarkets, in and around supermarkets and places like that, statistically, are higher areas for crime. And sadly, we've got Christmas around the corner. Who are the people who are buying the food, shopping, who will probably drive to a car park, park the car, go out, get the shopping? It's us. We're the ones doing that. So I always think that sadly crime happens everywhere, and it's all about trying to focus on the areas and the things that we can do to ensure that we do feel safer. I think that the one thing I would love in the future is to create, and we're in talks of it now, AI that can layer multiple different factors that can create completely I'm not obviously foolproof, but the smartest and safest way for people to get to places, and whether that be layering on points of interest like safe spaces, previous crime data, footfall, CCTV, all of this stuff can really create safer outcomes. So I suppose to me it's always looking at how we can use technology to understand if somewhere isn't that safe but where it is, and then change perhaps our routes or create different decisions when you know that. But if you don't know that, you don't know that. You don't know what you don't know. So I think half the time it's about really using the tools we have around us to make those safer choices. And I think that on a issue that we talked about earlier is, what can we do and how we can bring about change. And I think with our technology, I think a lot of men typically feel that they feel safer out in the world and they don't need things like apps. But usually when I say to them, but, do the other people in your life, what about your children, your wife, your sister, your mother, is there a way that you can show up and be an ally to her by downloading an app like mine? So if she does want to share her journey, if she does want to have that added layer of security, you can show up for her and, ensure that she does get to her destination safely. So I think it's always about, like Lisa said earlier, having the conversation, showing up and just trying to be more active. And, technology like a free app can genuinely help to do that.
Yeah, sadly, here in the UK, we know that men are more unlikely to take action before they have a daughter. We don't have the same connection to our mother even here, or our sister, which many cultures do. So it's not until they have their own daughter that they realize the threat against women and what's going on.
It's interesting, though. I also think that there is a sort of a demographic, which is young boys, in terms of them going out as groups of young boys in major cities. It's more likely that another big group of boys might take umbrage with them. And it's, again, I think Emma's app could be of use to them, even though technically they wouldn't necessarily think that they would be the type of people to use it. But I can definitely see a particular age group, sort of 18 or 17 to 25, whereby actually you can be as, if you get into a fight with a group of blokes, you're more likely to hurt each other in a serious way. Do you know what I mean? And also the statistics around sort of young people carrying knives, right? But carrying it for their own protection. Well, the statistic is that that knife is going to end up being used against you, right? And it's about sort of using technology, using personal safety apps to kind of educate people around these societal issues, right? Because again, I see the aftermath of that, of young people 12, 13, 14 coming into court, and you're like, this is serious. This is a mandatory X amount of, this is big time. And they're like, but, somebody was bullying me on my estate, so I took the bread knife out. It's like, and it's about education. Like so much of what we do is about changing the narrative and about but it's about, I'm about systemic change, but that's sweeping change. And it's about having the same conversation on the big issues at the same time on a national level. It literally needs to be. So that means having conversations with national government, local local councils and other agencies, on a regular basis. Because I fear, my biggest fear around what happened to Sarah Everard and so many women before her and since is that we remember it at that moment, and then we all make a noise about it, and then it falls off the agenda, and we kind of pat ourselves on the back and go, oh yeah, I kind of wrote that policy and I stuck it on the website, and there you go, job done. No, it is not done. You haven't even touched upon it. And so I've kind of seen myself as that nagging voice in the industry that I work in. It's like, I am going to hold you accountable. I am going to ensure that this is not a tick box initiative. I am going to make sure, I'm going to be that nagging woman who's going to be like, so what have you done about this? And what are you doing about that? And so you say this, but how does that manifest itself, you know, in terms of the people that you subcontract to? Oh, that you don't really check that. Oh, right. Okay, so you haven't really done anything about it. And it's about, you know, come on, these are people that are there safeguarding the people we love. And I don't want to be having difficult conversations with people, you know, who might do harm to my loved ones. You know, I would rather proactively make the world better by ensuring that everybody is doing as much as they can be doing to make spaces safer and communities more resilient, right? Because I don't want to live in a horrible, you know, it's really depressing at the moment. You know, so often I just don't even want to read, you know, the latest headline, because it's just like, oh, are we just accepting this? Is this all right? I don't want my children growing up in that world. I just don't.
Emma, it's a collective effort, that's for sure, and you're doing fantastic work within that. Is there any person or specific organization, an MP or any institution that you would like to kind of single out and put this in front of, who is not as reactive as they should be?
I think we're all aware that certain police forces perhaps have a little way to go, and I think they're taking the right steps, which is fantastic. I always say to people that writing to your MP, like you just touched on, is really important. Keeping the pressure on does make a difference, but I think sometimes it's even about those sort of tangible changes within your organization, even, you know, your own work. I don't know if you work in an office, and taking your feelings of how you know, get to work each day, how are you commuting, is there more your work can be doing for you around that? Staff drinks, I think it's all about taking action for not only for yourself and sharing that, but, you know, other people that you may work with. And I think sometimes even just raising it in your day-to-day life will have a huge impact, because I think sometimes we don't share when we feel a certain way, and I think challenging the status quo, even within your community, even within your own work, anything like that feels small, it probably isn't. And if there isn't systems and isn't policies in place, which I'm sure most places do have now, but it's something that we're definitely focusing and looking at, is how businesses can support their staff getting to and from, like I said, work, or even work parties and drinks. And I think there is more so many people could be doing for their employees. So I think just taking those sorts of tangible steps that don't feel too overwhelming, they don't feel like a big job, but can really change life for a lot of people around you. So I suppose it's just things like that. I think people could, you know, show up and support and do more in their own organizations first.
We're all part of that collective. Yeah. What were you going to say, Lisa?
I was just saying, I was a couple of months ago, I was at the Labour Party conference. They had a sort of a SME day, and they invited certain people from all over the country. It was fascinating, and I remember being on a sort of a kind of a side event, and they were talking about nightlife economy in Manchester, Greater Manchester. And Manchester's amazing, does really great stuff, but you know, we forget about sort of pockets of demographics and groups of people who, again, disproportionately are affected by the policy making of local authorities, the government. They don't think about it. For example, young students, right? They want their jobs. Buses and trams in Manchester stop running about, right, you know, I don't know, some ridiculous hour like 9:30 or 10 o'clock. It's like, but they're working in bars and clubs that finish at 1 a.m. How the hell are they going to get home? Oh, what? They're going to have to spend half the money they've just earned for the night to get an Uber. It's like, come on, right? So again, where's the joined up conversation with the people making these policies and the actual, you know, what is really happening with real people with real issues? What are we doing about that? And it's about that joined up conversation that still just isn't quite happening. And I don't know whether it's because no one's pushing for it, or it just all feels a bit much. I don't know. But for me, I when I look at something, I'm kind of visual, and I'm going, hang about, that just doesn't make any sense. I mean, in Brighton, when I was working on the doors, I drive, right? But at 4 o'clock in the morning, when you're being thrown out of chalk, they're all hanging about, right, and causing a nuisance and pissed and loud, because the first bus back to the university campuses don't run until 6 o'clock in the morning. What the hell is that about? It just doesn't make any sense. It's like, sorry, but you're complaining about antisocial behaviour, but you could solve that problem by just bloody well making sure that on the 2 or 3 big student nights, when there are like thousands of students hanging about, you get them off the street really quickly and you get them home safely, right? But I don't know, is that too much to, is that too, I don't know whether is that just a woman being
It sounds so bleeding obvious to me.
I don't know, but I look at stuff and it's like, I'm sorry, if it seems sensible, then let's just get on with it and do it, right? Don't tell me that it can't be done. Yes, it can. Just do it. But
the investment is a saving, that's for sure, obviously. Emma, let us know. We're going to share all the links about everything we've been talking about. How can people get in touch? How can they download the app, and how can they get in touch with you or the organization if they want to?
Thank you. So we're on all app stores, Google Play, and the Apple App Store. So and we're free. Again, I just want to highlight we're free. So please download and share. And also you can find us online, www.walksafe.io. And we love to hear from you, and we're across all socials. So yeah, please do get in touch.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to share that and make sure we share it online as well to everyone. And do share it on for those who are viewing this, of course. Spread the word and look after each other. And Lisa, tell us how we can get involved, how we can support, and where you're based.
Yeah, so I'm based in your hometown, Brighton of Hove.
Well, online, your online space.
But yeah, no, second line of defence, it's 2ndlineofdefence.com, so website. I'm on LinkedIn, Second Line of Defence, and the same Instagram, Facebook as well. And actually, it's something that I'll talk to Emma about offline, but next year, as part of this drive, it's been a busy year for me, but as I said to you, next year is about that national conversation for me. And I want to, there are 3 kind of key areas that I touched upon as we were talking earlier today. And I want to take that conversation as a framework to every major city in the country. So we talked about systemic change happens when we have simultaneous conversations about big issues that materially affect our lives. So I will be going with that. Oh God, aren't we? Next year. But it's obviously collaborating with organisations like WalkSafe and taking that conversation around the country and saying, come on, look what we're doing. We're 2 women, right, alone, and this is what we're doing. Well, come on, there is no excuse now. And that's something that will be my absolute focus for 2024. And it's an election year. I keep saying, people get busy, vote with your, use your voice, but also remember that you are powerful, right? If you want those people to get your mandate to govern us for the next whatever years, you need to make sure that they're fit for purpose. And I just won't, it's unacceptable if you don't think that they are. Get rid of them.
That sounds like a good plan, Lisa, for 2024. And we're connecting you with Safe Spaces Now, which is UN Women UK's project to keep women and girls safer. And the ideas that they have for doing this is also growing, but that's why we need to raise funding for it. So they're already doing things at music festivals, for taxis, places and public transport. So it is growing, and together as a collective, we can do more. So we need to link up as many instances, as many powerful women like you and men, our allies, and the government to support. So if you please can donate to Safe Spaces Now, the link is under this video, and we're going to support them to grow, to create even more safe space initiatives and workshops for everyone really around the country. Thank you so much for joining me, Lisa and Emma. Links are next to this video if people want to get in touch with you. I wish you a fabulous rest of your day, and we'll be back with another video tomorrow. Thank you,
Great
everyone,
talking
for
to you.
watching.
Bye. Take care. Bye, Emma.
Don't forget to donate to Safe Spaces now, link next to the video.